Hello, good afternoon. My name is Gyeonggeon Lee from Natural Sciences and Science Education Department of NIE. So today I'm going to present something titled A Framework for Bias and Ethics in AI in Relation to Justice in Science Education. My presentation would be a bit conceptual, a bit theoretical, rather than very much applicable. However, I hope this presentation is beneficial to everyone. So this is the table of contents. So as science educator, I have been questioning, like, can AI be used for good in science education? And I believe that science education should reflect contemporary science, what we learn, and education, how we learn. In that sense, the fact that AI won 2 Nobel Prizes in 2024 gave me a lot of insights. AI won the Nobel Prize 2024 for chemistry using by AlphaFold. So the AlphaFold basically converts the sequence of amino acids into 3D structure of protein. Interestingly, the Miss Hasabi here never majored chemistry. He's an AI developer. He developed chess algorithms, Go game algorithms, never studied chemistry. However, he won Nobel Chemistry Prize. And I argued that this is redefining what is science, what we learn as science. And AI also won Nobel Prize in Physics in 2024 too. John Hopfield and Geoffrey Hinton, who developed the deep learning algorithm, won the Nobel Physics Prize. And I argued that this is redefining how we learn in terms of science education. The journal Science published a commentary from Professor Sibyl Duran from Oxford. It was 2022, I guess, before ChatGPT. And she said, AI is transforming how science is done. Science education must reflect this change. I cannot agree more, and many of us are agreeing to this statement. Well, yes, even before ChatGPT, the inaugural volume of Computers and Education Artificial Intelligence, the editors wrote like AI can be tutor, could be tutee, could be partner, could be advisor, and other scholars also said that AI could help students, teachers on a server, regardless of they are in classroom, at home. However, I think like, is it that brand new? I remember before ChatGPT, there was a term AI already, and I tried to trace back when AI has been integrated into science education research. So this is an excerpt from a paper published in JAST, a top journal, the top journal in science education field. I'll give you 30 seconds to 1 minute to guess when it was published in an article in Journal of Research in Science Teaching. Yeah, I will give you 30 seconds to read and guess. Professor Park, have you any guess? 85, wow. Yeah, it is between 1 and 2025, so between 1 and 2025, yeah. Any other audience who would like to make a guess? Any other audience who would like to make a guess? Nobody? 1980. All right, thank you. Actually, it was published in 1986. But what I found is that the thing written in this article is not that very much different from what we nowadays discuss. But there's one difference between the article and the situation of nowadays. they say lack of funding is keeping the progress low. We have a lot of funding about AI nowadays, but back then, I guess there was not much funding about AI. Interestingly, I never met the author of the paper. However, I found the author's name is Good. So, yeah, they were imagining whether AI could be used good for science education. 40 years later, in 2023, there was a fierce debate in Journal of Research in Science Teaching. Actually, they are our colleagues. They know each other. One of them is my postdoctoral advisor. One of them is my advisor's advisor. And they're all friends from US, China. There was a paper published in JARST, and they applied machine learning to automatically assess students' scientific model, which means student drawings. And then these authors wrote a commentary at JARST that can we and should we use AI for formative assessment in science? They are saying, no, we should not, and we cannot. They say like English language learners' answer cannot be scored well since there will be societal bias. And they responded back like, AI and formative assessment, the train has left the station, and we can solve the problem via algorithm. After that, Chris and Kupch, now she's at Stanford and he's at Berlin Free University, and they were in the middle of the two. Yeah, there are two different meanings of bias. They are saying something about societal bias, and they are saying something about statistical and technological bias. If we read into Chris and Kupch's paper, they say like, their title is actually Bias Everywhere. The meaning of bias in AI education field is so confusing. And they identify 10 sources of bias in AI lifecycle, depending on Baker and Han. Although they categorize these 10 sources of bias into modeling and data bias and societal bias. Then what would happen if we look into Baker and Han? This is what we can find about sources of bias. If I counted correctly, there are like 17 sources of bias. So I face a question. How many biases are there? So when I say bias, and when you say bias, are we talking about same thing? But I bet there will be very much of confusion when you say about bias in AI education. For example, what if ChatGPT says, or Claude or Gemini says, there have been more male scientists than female scientists in the world? Is it biased or not? Is it true? Maybe, I guess so. But one of the sources cited in Baker-Han says, word as it is can also be biased, but other papers does not care about it. So this is the structure of biases in terms of sociological and statistical. How do they reproduce each other in a quite simple way, as far as I could derive from literature. However, it is still too confusing, I would say. When I say bias, one of these will be connotated. And when somebody else says about bias, another one of these will be connotated. Some people want to answer to this problem of very confusing multiple meanings of bias. One of our colleagues are showing that, let's say, since the people around here insisted that English language learners' response may not be accurately scored in AI model. They showed that if we include plenty of English language learners' data when we train automatic scoring model, there will be no problem at all. So we can solve this problem to some extent. Then another question arises. Should we mitigate bias? Astonishingly, it was last year, Even in last year, the performance of image generation model of Google Gemini was not very much high. So when users requested Gemini to produce a picture of Pope, they gave like black male Pope and Indian female Pope, I guess. And even when the user requested AI to draw a white farmer in the South, but Gemini failed to generate images of white farmers. It is because Gemini and Google developers wanted it to be not representing very much of majority group. They wanted the model to represent more marginalized and minority group. So these image model failed to any white people. That was only last year. So should we mitigate bias? The question still remains. When AI was requested to draw a Pope, when AI was requested to draw a white farmer in the South, should draw it as it has been requested. Another point, if we define bias in statistical sense, in model fitting sense, in textbooks, upper undergraduate level, it is simply written, known, it's just impossible. As model complexity increases, the model's bias is decreased but never goes to zero. And when the model's bias is decreased, the model's fitted model variance increases, so total error increases. So in statistical sense, it's just impossible, mathematically impossible to make it zero. So what I and my colleague insisted in one paper is that mitigating bias does not directly lead to ensuring equity. To analogize, the former is like curing disease from a person from negative to neutral states, and the latter is like establishing healthier and lively well-being from neutral to positive states. Let's say we have an unbiased survey instrument. Will that automatically ensure educational gain? So my answer is maybe not. So when we say equity and equality, those kind of terms are being integrated actively in AI education field nowadays. In this figure, the authors of a book chapter from Oxford says that, so this is the state what we want. But the boxes here can be analogized as computational resources and even societal resources, our efforts, financial supports, and time endeavors, and teacher supports, whatever. Is this biased or is this biased? Is this good or is this good? That was my question. On the internet, a person insists that he first developed this diagram, and there are tons of variations about the equality and equity diagram. Maybe this could be the most famous version of a diagram, and many AI education literature is citing this diagram. I would say yes, from left to right, it is being more closer to justice. But from left to right, is it being unbiased? I'm not sure. One example, I tried draw a scientist test for image generation models. Mid-journey, when I requested draw a scientist 100 times, can you guess how many male scientist images were generated among 100? 70? Okay, thank you. How many white people? So it was like 81% of the image was male, and 85% of the image of scientists was white. It shows some biased data used in the model training. However, I found a very interesting thing recently. The latest OpenAI model generates 84 female and 24 male scientists among 100. Wow. Well, it is not corresponding to the reality we have. However, I would say this may be desirable, since when the public reads the image generated by AI, they will think like, okay, there can be female scientists. Oh, there are more female scientists. And it is well known in STEM education field that when female students are encouraged to pursue a STEM career, they will be more likely to do so. So, my idea is like, biased and unbiased, ethical and unethical are two different dimensions. Yes, we want to support marginalized learners like this. We don't want a situation like this. And same learning experience with AI for all learners is not enough. We want to support marginalized learners using AI. For example, we experienced that when we put student answers to ChatGPT to do some automatic scoring research, it automatically corrected English typos in student responses, which means ChatGPT can be used to support English language learners. If their English written responses are automatically scored by ChatGPT, ChatGPT can actually support them. And we believe teachers and students should understand how AI model works, have access to AI models, and participate in AI model development and deployment. It is called human-in-the-loop approach. I'd like to share one more example. So we are doing AI in Education Innovation Challenge in NIE, and the process can be called as in a human-in-the-loop approach. So in the AI in Education Innovation Challenge, I'm mentoring 3 physical education and sports science students. And we are working with Amazon Web Service developers together for a project. So the PESS students want to develop a system that automatically detects lapse, which happens many times in primary and secondary schools. Automatically records, updates, runner 1, 2, 3, when they exactly came into the front line. They actually have a prototype using vibe coding, using artificial intelligence. Let's say there will be 10 runners and the laps will be 4. Then the 10 buttons are generated, and whenever a teacher sees runner number 1 comes in, and he or she will touch the button and the color will be changed. When the lap is done, the color will turn into black and no update will be allowed. They still want to develop it in using computer vision technique, since this even still requires teachers' work in checking the exact timing when the runner comes in. So we had some opportunity to visit Amazon Web Service, and they taught our students about how do they develop their products, doing some brainstorming like that. And students are doing some planning to pursue their further development using computer vision techniques. So my conclusion is like we should shape AI usage for good in science education. And there are multiple meanings of bias, which makes discussion quite confusing. And we need to go beyond mitigating bias, and a new 2-dimensional framework for bias and ethics in AI can be helpful. And teachers are already in the loop, and this will be the future into integrating AI for teacher education and science education. Yeah, thank you so much.